everybody, and welcome to Tatter-a-fact here at Girlz Ink in Las Vegas. And I am happy to be here today, and I'm happy to have all of you here today. So thanks for hanging out with us. Today I have a really interesting guest, and I know I say that about all my guests, but I think all my guests are interesting. This particular gal I have known just about my entire career. I remember the day that I met her. I don't know if she'll remember, but I remember. Please welcome Shauna Magrath to the podcast. Hey, Shauna.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. So let me just give my listeners a little background about you. So you are Shauna Magrath. You are in Vancouver, Canada. You've been doing permanent makeup since 2008, so about 16 years. Mm-hmm. And you got into SMP in 2010. That's mostly what we're going to talk about today is SMP, because I think, and you're the perfect person to talk about it with, because you're really good at it. You're not just a good artist, good technician, like good application, but you're a great educator in it, and you're a female.
Last time I checked, I was.
She's a female, everybody. And I think it's just, and this is an area that has been male dominated for a very long time. And now we're seeing a lot of female artists get into the area of SMP, which I think is fantastic. And so we're going to talk all about SMP. You got a course launching, so we'll get into that a little bit. But so let's just jump right into conversation, Shauna. So I remember the first time I met you in person, and I'm wondering if you remember. If we're on the same...
Back when I saw your conference in Anaheim?
With Jeannie Lusby. Yeah, very good. That was the first time I ever met you. And yes, Linda Dixon, we're bringing up a veteran's name, like an OG from way back when. Pioneer. A lot of people listening to us today probably do not know who Linda Dixon is, but every chance I get on this podcast, I like to mention the OGs, the pioneers, the veterans, and I like to pay a little homage to them. I don't want them to be forgotten, because the industry was built on the backs of Darlene Story, Linda Dixon, Elizabeth Finch Howell, Marjorie Gray. Val Glover Hoven, Dixie Medford, all of them. There's so many. And, and one thing that's always kind of bothered me is that in the tattoo industry, which I was a big part of, they're writing and documenting that history. There's lots of docuseries on Netflix and TV. There's books. I mean, the history of body tattooing and all the pioneers and people that started that industry, it's all documented and written about. It's revered. And they're making sure the new artists coming in today know that history. And we have yet to do that in permanent makeup. We have a vast history, interesting, exciting, and vast history that goes back to the early 70s. And you and I are two people that got to see some of these pioneers. We got to sit in their lectures. Maybe we took some one-on-ones with them. I know I did. I think you did. And the history books have not been written yet. We're not really documenting that and cultivating that history so artists today know the history of PMU. So I hope soon some artists in PMU get together. I think it's going to take a village of PMU artists to kind of start making sure that happens for PMU. I think it's important, right?
I agree. No, absolutely. Those women, I mean, they pioneered so much of the foundation of what we have grown on. And all of these new artists that have come out and just regurgitated and renamed, their knowledge or their techniques, they really do we have to hold a light up for them, because without their trial and error, I mean, Linda Dixon, I mean, the woman was using OxyClean for tattoo removals. Like, come on, like, without their ability to really, think outside of the box and go against the grain and break conventional norms and break the glass ceiling, we would not be the industry we are today.
No.
It so crucial, and the history and what they've given to our to nurture the foundation of what we have now grown in the last 5-10 years is undeniable. And thank you so much for giving them space and allowing them to have a moment in your podcast, so they're not forgotten, and we continue to honor them and give them the legacy that they well deserve.
Yeah, I get really emotional sometimes when I speak about them, because they are important. Like I said, I mean, the industry was built upon their backs, their shoulders, and there wasn't a place for them to go learn, because they were ostracized by the body tattoo industry.
Right.
So they were alone in learning and developing the PMU techniques and skills and needles and all this stuff. The industry was really built by them, and then there's that generation, Shauna, and then there's me and our generation. I think I came a little bit before you. I'm celebrating 24 years this year. So I'm a little bit before you. And then, so there's my generation that they handed me the baton, and then I had to go out and do some building of my own, and then you come along, and lots of others, Robin, there's so many. I think at every generation we hand the baton over, and then they run with it, and they make the industry stronger and better. And so I do like paying homage to them, and it's my mission to make sure that things get written, our history gets documented, and and they are remembered.
Without your sharing, you were the first one ever that I had ever seen talk about needles. Never had I ever known about tapers or diameters or configurations. I would just buy what Nouveau Contour sold, and I would use it, not knowing anything about it.
Yeah.
So you were really the one that pioneered needle knowledge for our industry, and, opened up the whole entire world to the needles that we have today. So
yeah, thank you. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, it was my pleasure. I had a blast doing it. I got a lot of flack for it. Oh. I mean, a lot of flack. Because, do you remember what the Contour Nouveau needles sold for per needle? Like $20. $20 per needle. And here I come from body tattooing using pristine needles that cost me about a nickel. And I'm like, why are you guys paying $20 a needle? I've never heard of such a thing. I think the machine itself was $15,000 or $20,000. It was very
my machine was $7,000.
$7,000. Wow. And I'm using a machine that was $300.
Right.
So so that was
you only know what you know, and we didn't know, and nobody shared back then.
No one shared back then. Yeah.
Like, it's not like now. It's crazy now. You can into a platform, into a forum, and ask a question. We never had forums. We never had training. Right. We never had any of that stuff. If you wanted to get advanced knowledge, you would have to find some kind of a boot camp or some kind of a conference, or the SPCP.
Yes.
That was the only place you could go to get knowledge. There was no online platforms. There was no online training, so the amount of steps that we had to take to get ahead were 100 times harder than what it is now. Now it's so easy. The information is almost oversaturated.
Yeah.
To the point where there's too much knowledge the right way, or there's too much knowledge the wrong way, and too many egos of people that want to be famous, and they're spewing, this poor information that their uneducated trainer told them, and they're sharing it out to the world like they're an expert at it, and it's misinformation.
Yeah, I was going to say that we went from, you and I have experienced lack of knowledge, lack of information, to fast forward to today, way too much, and a lot of it is misinformation. It's just to sell products, to make money, to become famous for all the wrong reasons,
or to make the industry seem less tattooy. Oh, it's semi-permanent makeup.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times I have had clients come in that have said, oh, I just have semi-permanent eyebrows, and I'm like, well, how long have you had them? Oh, they've been there for 4 years. I'm like, well, don't you think that they're pretty much not semi-permanent at this point?
Well, let's define semi-permanent. I mean, what is the definition of semi-permanent? I mean, I guess that would be the first thing. Is it leaves in a year, it leaves in 2? Let's define semi-permanent so we know what that means, because no one really knows what that means.
No, it's just a coin phrase that they've stuck out there, and we all know where it came. Well, I know where it came from. The whole microblading world, when we got this whole microblading rush coming in, and these companies are saying, yes, but our pigments are semi-permanent.
Yeah.
Well, I know some of those. I used a couple of those pigments, and I see the blue residue 6, 7, 8 years later. There's nothing semi-permanent about any pigment.
No. Well, you just posted, I just shared it. You just posted an eyebrow, a microblading eyebrow. And no shit, this is no exaggeration. It was 9, was it 9 or 7 or 9? 9 years old.
2015, she came in and saw me. And I was walking around the lagoon here and ran into her by accident. And I was like, oh my God. She's like, Shauna. And I was like, oh, hi. She's like, you did my eyebrows. And I was like, looking at them. I was like, wow, that was 2015 at least. And they're still looking great.
Well, you snapped a picture and you posted it, and you used LI pigments. And I know you use a lot of lines. I know you're not loyal to one line. You're an artist that will find excellent colors, good quality in a few different lines to suit your needs. But this particular client, you had happened to use an LI pigments pigment combination on her. And I was like, oh, yes.
I know. I couldn't.
It was really beautiful. It still looked intact, and it still looked good.
The only thing that I found that was, she had dry skin on the surface. But other than that, I mean, that brow looked, it still was brown, brown.
Crazy, right?
Still could see the strokes.
I know. Crazy.
Still looked great. And, and the falseness of microblading be this horrible technique and doesn't age well. And you know what? When it comes to any PMU, if you are not executing the depth, the color selection correctly, you're not going to have great results.
No, 100.
But if you execute the color and the color selection and the depth correctly, those results will last. I do my clients every 6 years for microblading. Yeah,
and wouldn't you agree the right skin type? Because there's some skin types that's not conducive to microblading. Yeah. They're not. It's not the most ideal skin for microblading. I think it comes down to like skin assessment too. Like, if they have large pores, super oily, that's probably not the best skin type or microblading is not the most ideal technique on that particular skin type. So I think artists have a lot of control, and I think artists are forgetting that. And not all, I don't want to make this blanket statement, but some artists they're quick to blame the pigment when we artists, I have a webinar, it's a paid webinar. It's like June 23rd. And it's Mastering Your Healed Results. And in that webinar, I really outline how the artist has a lot of control. a lot of control, and we can master those healed results. And I think a lot of artists don't understand how, or don't see where we have control, and can really dictate that healed result. And the only thing we don't have control of, we can assess the skin properly, and by proper skin assessment, we can choose the most ideal technique, whether it's microblading, powder brow, low saturation. Do we have to do a little more high saturation because of, overtone traits? So we can assess the skin properly. We do have control to do that. So we pick the right technique, pick the right pigment, pick the right saturation choice. Now, beyond that, no, we can't control how the skin's going to accept pigment, heal pigment. But that's the one area we don't have control. All the other areas, we have a lot of control, Shauna.
Yes.
So I'm really excited to do this class. But anyway, would you agree that 9 years of microblading look that good is maybe not the norm, maybe more the average is maybe 1.5 to 3 years, and having a microblading client look that good at 9 years is a phenomenon, maybe in the lower percentage?
Well, for my clients, it's common.
It's more common. Why do you think so? Why do you think it's common for your clients?
Because I've taken so much training. I didn't take one 3-day class. And let's get this right. Microblading is an advanced skill. It's never something that should have been taught for people right out of the gate. It's an advanced skill that you learn after you have your fundamentals. But because we have no more fundamentals that seem to be diminishing in these, pop-up classes.
So let me ask you this. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think this is important for our listeners to hear. What makes it an advanced technique, in your opinion? And a brand new artist, when they're getting licensed, you say back to fundamentals, should they be starting with a shaded brow? Is that more of a fundamental brow, in your opinion? And what makes the microblading technique an advanced technique, in your opinion? So let's start with first, do you feel the shaded brow is a more fundamental brow to start with? You do?
Yes,
why?
I do.
Why?
Because you're doing one basic technique through the whole entire brow, and you're learning brow mapping, brow shaping, the pigments that you're using, the needles, the depth, the pressure, all of those things. And when you're doing a shaded brow, it's way easier. Why do you think everybody's going to a shaded brow now? To cover up the bad microblading. So I think if people had started with the foundation and the fundamentals, where they're learning their color theory, they're learning their depth and their pressure, they're learning skin types, skin disorders, nutrition, aftercare, all of these things are so critically important. Once you master those, then you have an idea about skin type. When we're microblading, we're using a concession of needles into the skin, and we're cutting the skin. So yes, we're creating a trauma, but so does a tattoo needle. But when it comes to microblading, the way that we're doing the strokes, the depth is so critical. The skin condition is so critical. Knowing how to create your brow shape is so critical. Being consistent with your pressure through all the strokes is so critical. You cannot learn this as a beginner. With the shaded brow, you get all that fundamental information, and you can see the client coming back. Oh, this section is more saturated than that section. The areas of our brows are different. The bulb is much stronger than the top of the arch to the tail. The skin tissue is different. The dexterity of the skin itself is different. So I think it's really important that you walk and before you run. But with microblading in these 3-day classes, it all came down to greed and money for the conglomerate that made this so incredibly massive. But what's happened is it's damaged the industry because artists don't know what they don't know, and they're jumping off the deep end without the fundamental information to support them.
Yep.
So then they are going in and they're, oh, I can do this on a practice pad. Well, a practice pad does not have 3 different variations of skin depth.
Yeah.
It doesn't have fat underneath. There's so many elements to the skin. It's not limited to, what are they eating? What is their exercise routine? So yes, you can make a practice pad look gorgeous, but then transferring that onto the skin, and with these microblading techniques, the patterns are so convoluted, they're so advanced, and they're doing all of these strokes, and then now they're shading into it. That now it looks like people are getting tiger eyebrows. It's just too much. And I really wish that we could just scrap this whole concept of a 3-day class, go back to the 100-hour fundamentals. But unfortunately, it did become fast food for the masses. And students, why would they take a $7,000 7-day class when they can take a $2,500 3-day class? They don't get, there's a disconnect in our industry between the two parallels. And this is where the advanced training is so important.
Well, and this is the big reason that the body tattoo industry doesn't take us seriously and has a lot of conflict with us, right? So,
but look at the crossover. We brought those cartridges, and now because we were so in demand for those cartridges and those small machines and the cordless devices, the tattoo industry would not have that today without PMU.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
they can hate us all they want, but we have as much right to be in the industry, and we complement each other. We're not conflicting. It's complementary.
Oh, 100%. I've always felt that.
And I see this in SMP, where sadly tattoo artists think our craft is so easy. Well, the face and the head skin is very different than the body skin, and they treat the face and the head like it's the body. And we have disasters. I mean, I've seen some horrific SMP work by tattoo artists that think doing dots in the scalp is just so easy.
Right. It's just a dot. It's just a dot. So I agree with you. I think the industry got a little lost, and they're jumping. And instead of starting in the fundamentals, really learning color theory and how to assess skin, right? Because skin has a high influence over our healed in tone. Our technique, the depth in which we implant the pigment, has a high influence over our pigment and healed in tone. The saturation level, everybody's into low saturation and shallow depth. That's highly influencing the healed in tone and the performance of the pigments.
And the staining.
And the staining
that's being resulted from this, because there's too many modifiers being overused without the right depth, and people being left with orange, salmon, and yellow brows.
Yep. Yeah. So I would encourage everybody to, because I see a lot of people jumping right into the trends, trendy art. I think Rose, we just did a webinar with Rose Prito, and she calls it sexy trainers. Like everybody's attracted to the sexy trainers and the trainers that are promising 6-figure incomes and flashing their Rolexes and whatever. And that bothers a lot of people in the industry, because, but there's always going to be people that are attracted to that. And then there's people that look right through that, see what that is. And then they're looking for more substance. So, you're always going to have that, I guess, in every industry. But, I just really encourage people, if you are attracted to the sexy trainers, nothing wrong with taking classes from the sexy trainers. You're always going to pick up a nugget or two of something valuable from every trainer. But get back to those fundamentals. Get back to those fundamentals. Learn color theory, learn how to assess skin, learn needles, learn depth, learn saturation levels. And don't be cookie cutter. It's not one saturation for everybody, one needle for everybody, one type of movement for everybody. It's not. It's really important to learn it all, right?
There's not one needle for everybody.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, this whole one liner needle thing that's going on. I mean, I get that you can do nano strokes and it's all great and fine. You know, Mary showed us that. She's the godmother of the nano brow, and we must give her credit, because
100%.
without her, there would be no nano brows right now.
Yes.
She set that foundation with that one liner needle, and it's a mastery. But, you know, to do a full lip with a one liner needle when there's mags out there, why?
Yeah.
But it comes down to lack of knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people love that single needle, you know, and at first I was kind of like, you know, when the first single needle came out, I was like, oh my God, I don't understand it. Like what, you know, but now, you know, I became really open to it and curious about it, rather than being judgmental. Because I will admit, at first I was a little judgmental, and now I see really great artists that love that single needle. Look at Na, right? She loves that single needle for her brows. She does get good saturation. So I've seen artists, lots of artists that have mastered that single needle. They're not overworking skin. When they are getting oily skin type or challenging skin type, they now do jump up to a mag or a larger configuration. You know, so now I've learned to really respect the artist that uses the single needle, and but there's a lot of skin types that are not conducive for a single needle. So if an artist starts out learning single needle and that's all that they know, Shauna, I think that puts them at a disadvantage. I would say run with the single needle if you like it, master it, get really good at it. You'll probably use it the rest of your career on the right skin type, but also go learn the larger needles, whether it's a larger shader and or a mag. So you have all the needle configurations at your disposal, and you can work efficiently and smartly on all the different skin types, right?
Again, this comes back to fundamentals.
Fundamentals.
And if artists had learned their fundamentals, they would have this knowledge, but they're doing themselves a disservice by taking these 3-day classes and not having any of the fundamental information. And then they have to go into these groups and be like, oh, I have this artist. What color do I use? Or what needle should I use? And, you know, if they took the fundamental training and had that knowledge, they would be self-sufficient.
Yeah. And you know this is where I've kind of landed on the 3-day classes. Because I'm like you, it's not nearly enough. I mean, you're talking, there's a 5-year learning curve in permanent makeup, right? I think we can all agree on that.
And that's with advanced, continuing
training. Yeah. So where I've kind of landed on the 3-day training is I don't think there's a lot of really good options for longer fundamental PMU training programs. So there's not. A lot of people don't want to do them. There's more money in doing the shorter classes. So there's a shortage of them. So I see a lot of artists take the 3-day microblading course like a Jen Boyd. She did. So I've learned not to hate or judge the 3-day classes. Go take a 3-day class because that's what's readily available. But in that 3-day class, if something struck you and you're like, I love this, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, it is now your responsibility to know and to understand that you now need to find really good training, long-term training, surround yourself with mentors and a community, because you're going to be in training for a very long time. You have a lot to learn. You cannot come out of a 3-day class and start working on clients. You know,
just enough to get your taste buds
exactly
wet.
Use it as a stepping stone.
You should go find a fundamental 100-hour program where you can really invest and soak that sponge up so that all of that fundamental foundation, and this is exactly why I created my online SMP Essential Scalp class. This is exactly why, because in the world of SMP, there was no fundamental training. And I, over COVID, just got mad. I got tired of hearing it. So I built a fundamental class. I built the first fundamental SMP program that was out there. Now there's more of them, but they don't have the information that mine has. Because I'm a CPCP trainer, I think I'm the only CPCP SMP artist, but I'm not sure. There might be a couple others, but there's very few. And so developing this online course was just that. It was to fill in all of those gaps that were missing so badly in the industry and where we needed fundamentals. I mean, I was using colored pigments when everybody told me I was crazy for using color pigments, and everybody went to carbon, and I was like, you can't do carbon. It's not work over time. And now what's happening? Everybody's moving to colored pigments. And I was using colored pigments back in 2012, and people were telling me I was crazy. But I had my fundamentals, and I understood color theory and why it was so important to have that warmth. And this is why I'm so friggin' excited about what LI has created now with this colored line, because it's so needed.
Well, you know, Darlene, before Darlene Story's the owner of LI, and she saw the horrific results from carbon. And so she decided she saw a need for colored pigments in the SMP arena. And these scalp pigments, no joke, I am not exaggerating, they were 5 years in the testing. And we had SMP artists, very skilled SMP artists in different parts of the world, because you're talking the equator, you know, different parts of the world affects the tone. And the scalp, I think you mentioned this earlier, Darlene, Blanca, Mattia, the chemists at LI, 100% real understand how the scalp skin, the vascularity, and how pigment heals, is very, very different. So the depth. And so they spent 5 years, and so I think the LI scalp pigments, we have a hybrid line, and we have
organic,
the organics, and
but they're pre-modified.
Yes,
they're pre-modified to take the guesswork out of them. There's a binding agent in them, so they're not going to separate over time. I mean, in my opinion, this is the superior, most advanced pigment on the market right now, because there's no other pigment line that offers you an oxide, an organic inorganic hybrid, or just an organic line.
Right.
Like, I mean, I know that PermaBlend has their new pigment out, but again, it's secondary color theory. It's not like it's anything new. It's just a combination of their formulations that they've already mastered, because they did that with their first kit. It was mastered. That first kit that they did was excellent. But because it was a colored line, people poo-pooed it. And then now they've developed a new color line, and people are gravitating towards it because they know carbon is no longer the answer.
Right.
We need that warmth because the scalp is so acidic. The pH on the scalp is different than the body, and the amount of oil glands that are on the body. It all affects the longevity of how these pigments last and retain.
Well, you know, this is why I'm excited to have your scalp course on the Girlz Ink Training Academy, because all those years ago, when I first met you in Anaheim, sorry, and that was at Jeannie Lusby's, who I just saw about maybe 10 months ago, actually, ran into her at a conference. But you were a speaker, and I was in the audience, me and Kat and Dawn Marrero, we were in the audience, and I watched, and I think you spoke on a couple different topics as I did. And I watched you speak, Shauna, and I'm very attracted to very good, intelligent, articulate speakers and educators because I like learning.
Yes.
I feel if you love permanent makeup as much as I do, then you want to learn everything about it as deep as you can. I think your level of love for the craft transcends into your level of commitment in learning the craft and everything about it. And that is me. That's how much I love the craft in the industry. But you spoke and you caught my eye that day. And because you're an excellent trainer and you're very articulate, you articulate very well. You don't, so that's why I love this course. And I'm really proud to have your SMP course on my academy. It's so good. You go into depth the way I do. I think maybe sometimes we overshare, and maybe sometimes I think maybe I can overload the student because I want them to know the answer and then the why behind the answer, the why behind the why. And I like breaking everything down, and I'm very articulate, and so are you. So it's an excellent course. And I think this is a great procedure for PMU artists to get into. I think it's just now starting to boom for...
Do you know that 1 in 3 women over the age of 40 are going to be affected by hair loss? And we have a built-in clientele already in our PMU world. So adding SMP to your menu is the smartest thing that you can possibly do. And I think that the male perspective has gotten a little bit too skewed because everybody's doing bald heads, and it's easy to do a bald head. It's hard to do someone that's got hair or thinning.
Yeah.
So we already have a built-in network right there, and it's something that you can advance, and clients will keep coming back as their, condition possibly continues. You can give them more treatments. So it's something that can grow with the client, and the learning curve is not hard. You already know your pressure. You already understand depth. So it's a great segue to make bank in your business because you can charge so much for these procedures. When you're doing the front of the scalp here, and that's, $1,200, that's not a bad, session, 2 sessions of work.
And and I think, and the other thing I find, so a couple things. There's a lot of, you're right. It's not just bald men seeking these services. There's a lot of women with thinning crowns, thinning hair due to hormones, medications, simply aging. My own mother is one of them.
Mine too.
She has really bad thinning hair because she's on a lot of medication, and she's very embarrassed by it. I don't think we realize how many women are suffering from thinning hair, thinning crowns, because they're embarrassed and they're ashamed. A lot of them are buying wigs, they're buying little pieces, they're putting color on their scalp to disguise it. And I think once we get the message out that there is a service for women who are not just balding, but have thinning hair, thinning crowns, their parts are thinning, I think they are going to seek this service. They already are. We did a class, I was telling you before we went live, we did a class with the Scalp sisters, Jess and Carrie over in the UK. And we had a book of models, Shauna. And every single model that applied, 100% women. And at first I thought, oh my God, we didn't get a bald man. I thought maybe the class was going to lack or something. And Jess and Carrie were like, oh, no. It's actually better that it's all women because this is who we're seeing. We're seeing a change. We're seeing a trend. And it's harder because you got to match their hair, existing hair, and you got to make it look, it's harder. But so I wanted to say that. And then the second part was I do a lot of areola work. And that is life-changing for the client as well as for me because I've given them a piece of me, the service that I've learned And by giving them this service that I've learned, I've given them back their self-esteem, a piece of their body they missed, they lost during cancer. And it's so emotional. And not that thinning hair is on the same level as getting diagnosed with cancer and losing breasts. I'm not trying to compare the two. But there's an emotional component to it, Shauna. Right. When you give someone back, you know, when you can camouflage that bald spot, when you can do that for a woman, there is an emotional component to it. There is a component of giving them back their self-esteem, or maybe you ease them of the anxiety or the fear of the wind's going to blow, or someone's going to see their bald spot, you know, because some of them go to great lengths to hide it. They won't swim in front of people.
That's right.
The wind blows and they're freaking out that it's going to show their bald spot. So it's also, I think, this really deep, emotional, personal service and gift that we give back to a woman. And it's so rewarding. So I just wanted to say that as well. It
truly is. The confidence that you can give them back, you see it immediately. And I honestly, like, I have a client that swears that her SMP saved her marriage because she was so incredibly insecure that she wasn't able to be intimate with her husband because she was so insecure about her hair loss.
Yes.
And once we did her SMP, she felt sexy again. And you know, she was ready to, you know, get freaky. And, you know, seeing them together after, she was just like, Shauna, it's just made the world of difference to my marriage. And that alone was just, you know, so heart touching and gives you the juice of why you do this. And it may only be, you know, a small patch. Maybe somebody has alopecia and it's just a small piece that's fallen out. But if you can tattoo that in, just like you said, when the wind blows, or they can pull their hair up and it's not visible, you know, it gives them so much more freedom.
Yeah.
So I just think that if you're doing PMU, you should definitely be doing SMP. There's no reason why you shouldn't cross over. The only thing you need is a good, solid foundation and your education for it. And again, that comes back to why I built this course, and I cover female density in it. And I cover, you know, you get to see some procedures and how it affects these women. And it's not just that, it's also women of transgender. You know, when women trans into being gentlemen, they need beard shadow stippled,
which I would imagine would be so fun.
So crazy.
Cool. I think it would be so crazy fun to do little mustaches or sideburns or a little goatee. Yes, because you're right. I'm a part of the LGBTQ community. And so we get a lot of people in that community reaching out to us. And you're right. When female trans over into male, a lot of them want facial hair, right?
Or they can grow it in, but it's not thick enough.
It's not thick enough, right?
Get that layer of density into it.
Well, so there's even men too. I mean, like natural born men that their beards don't grow in full, they're patchy, and even men, or there are some men, come to find out, I didn't know this, that cannot really grow a mustache or a beard, but they want one.
Many of the European, a lot of German, you know, Scandinavian type of cultures, a lot of Asians, they just don't have that type of intense hair growth. So, you know, this gives you the option to be able to give those services to that clientele and make them feel confident and strong. And the great thing about this line, we'll go back to this line again, because it's pre-modified and there's a color for every, you know, skin type. You can do a blonde, you can do a light brunette, and you don't have to worry about their face turning blue from the black carbon. Like you're going to see this, you know, the facial hair, you know, pigmentation. You're going to see these men coming out with this bluing beards. Blue beards are going to be a thing in the next few years when all this carbon that people have been putting into their skin starts to change color. So again, this line that LI developed is for, you know, hair facial hair follicle simulation as well. So they've really knocked it out of the park with this one. And I can't be more proud to bringing this to the industry and helping to enrich artists so that they too can offer this service and have a supportive network so that they can continue to grow and advance their education. Because once you're a student of mine, that's it. My door is always open. So you can always come and reach me on Instagram and I will help you, because that's just the kind of person I am. It's just part of the way I've had so many incredible mentors, through my career, and I'm happy to pay it back with my knowledge and support. I've never been a trainer where you hear me today and then gone tomorrow. I've always been a trainer that if you reach out, I'm there, whether you've been my student 2 years ago or 5 years ago, if you have a problem or a business issue, I can always assist, and I'm happy to do.
Well, that's why I don't have like a ton of trainers and a ton of courses on my academy, because you want to make sure that, because your course is also a reflection of me and my judgment, right? Mm-hmm. And so you always want to make sure that you're putting on, a high quality courses where the student can take it and actually put it to use, practical use, and that the trainer is going to be there to support the student that signs up for the class. I think SMP, I think every single city or province needs 2 or 3 really highly educated and skilled SMP artists. And once you start putting out there, showing your pictures that you do this, not just for men, but in particular, women are going to see this. And I think it's the perfect time, Shauna, because we all know it's no secret. The economy is suffering. The industry is slow. Artists are slow, whether you're a big company, small company, big artist, small artist, and everything in between. Everybody's experiencing it. So this is a great time to learn a new service that is dual beneficial, right? Beneficial for you as an artist, because it's going to allow you to, increase your service menu, increase your clientele, increase your income, and become more financially stable and confident in that area, which I think is important for mental health and just, feeling safe. And it's going to be great for the women in your community. It's a great service that is really, really needed. So we've got about 10 minutes. So let's.
I just want to touch on one thing, Teryn.
Go ahead.
Because this is one of the things people are like, oh, but what about SMP? How do I get all my clients? Well, not only do you have your built-in network from your already existing PMU clients, which will come in automatically anyways, but everywhere you go, there's like, 1 million hair salons. So there's 1 million barber shops. So it's super easy to go into these with your flyers or, and offer this as a service to their clientele. Yeah. And especially if you're going to give them a referral fee, it's a win-win.
Well, because it's a niche, Shauna. And I think that's what artists look, right now, today in this industry, artists, I know a lot of suffering, right? I talk to a lot of them. A lot of them are struggling right now. And I always, I encourage them, look, if you love this, you don't give up. You got to stay in, but you got to be strategic and smart. You got to find the niches, because everybody's doing eyebrows. So find the niches. And what are the niches right now in permanent makeup? One is eyeliner, right? I just launched an eyeliner class. Not many people are doing eyeliner. And
that's
eyeliner,
why I do my manual liner.
Yes.
I love it.
And eyeliner is a great niche, and women want it. 80% of my eyebrow clients book their eyeliner or lash enhancement. It's a great niche to learn. And SMP is a great niche. It's not, those are 2 areas of permanent makeup that are not saturated.
No.
Not saturated.
And when you're a woman in it doing it, it's very different than when it's a man
100%.
Doing it. And also, a lot of women are not comfortable having men come to their studios.
Right.
So being able to offer this to women, you could create a niche just in a woman's market. you're hitting the country clubs, you're hitting the mummies groups, like, there's so much diversity out there, and there's so much potential. It's a no-brainer.
And where maybe there's 40 or 50 artists hitting that country club for brows, hitting that salon for brows, hitting that, all these networking areas for brows, there's no one hitting those areas for SMP or eyeliner, or very, very few. So that's what I hope this podcast does. This conversation is get them thinking about these little niche things that they can learn. I think this conversation will resonate with some people for sure.
And the men that are doing this in the industry, they stick with their men. It's the bromance, the men do men.
And there's nothing, and you and I are not, we're totally cool with the men doing this. I wanted to put that out there. We're not, we're like pro male SMP artists. Some of them are our good friends. I just now see this as an exciting opportunity for women now to enter, for women and we're girls. So it's girl power. We're all about girl power, even though we respect the male. It's just girl power, man. And I just think it's a great opportunity. So I have a couple questions I'm going to ask you. Like, if I'm a student thinking about signing up for your course, so that's kind of the role we're going to play. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and that's how we'll kind of wrap it up. So you mentioned LI pigments. Mm-hmm. So if I don't use LI pigments, say I'm using Permablend or another line, is this course still for me? Are you all like LI, pushing LI down their throats? Can I still take your class and learn the technique and be comfortable in your course if I already have a different line that I use and I love?
Yes, you can.
Excellent.
So the module that I created for the pigment is on the LI line, but it can be applied to any line. It can be applied to any organic pigment. The only difference is that I've created all of these charts, which are for the line,
right? But which are amazing.
You're able to with the dilution chart. So that's what you would use for, say, if you had another pigment line that was a carbon, or you have a black brown, you can take this chart and adopt it to the line because it's blank, so that you can fill it in. Where the other ones that are specifically for the LI line, these are already pre-filled. So it's just a matter of you learning. But everything else in the program that you're going to learn, from, the hair growth cycle to scarring to the needle configurations, how to go through your SDS sheets, how to do your layering, how to create your hairlines, the aftercare, the client. I go through so much. Diseases and disorders. All of this can be applied to any SMP. So again, this is a fundamental training. So if you're a PMU artist or a barber or an esthetician or anybody that has no SMP experience, this class is designed specifically for you. I've done it in easy to follow modules that are step by step. They're very visual learner. I'm a visual learner. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of video. Every module has PDFs after, so that you can print them off for reference material. So by the end of the course, you've got a full, fat, thick reference book for you to go from. So I've really put my heart and soul into this, and I wanted to keep it really simple. I didn't want to get all technical. We've seen those technical classes out there where they're just trying to spew off all of their big words and their science, and you can get lost. I get lost in them. So understood. I wanted something that was going to be really simple and easy for people to learn, and step by step by step, so that by the time they go through the course, they go, wow. And a lot of this material can also be applied to regular PMU, especially the needle section, right. the pigment color theory section, all can be applied to PMU as well. But because the color theory has been missing so badly in SMP, it's really important that you learn this, and then you can apply it to another line if you wanted to use another brow color, or sorry, another SMP line out there that's got a black pigment or a carbon, a mixed brown, a hybrid, or sorry, not a hybrid, but they're a colored carbon pigment.
Right.
So there are a lot of there's a lot of growth that you can take from this. It's like advanced training, but you will leave with solid fundamental information and go, wow, okay, I get it. Plus my technique is different than what's out there. You know, creating that layering technique, people weren't layering in SMP prior to my coming into the industry. They were doing all the whole work on one go, and then people would be gone. But by layering the color, you're able to create more of a nuance and more natural looking effect. You can create a three-dimensional effect. And especially with women, you want to do that softer layer first, because people don't want to walk in one day and have a bald patch and then leave the next day and not have a bald patch. Like, they want this to be subtle.
Like a transition, like transition into
gradual transition. Yeah. So my technique is different that way, as I'm coming from an effects makeup artist background. So when we were doing bald caps in film, we would block out the entire head, and then we have to re-layer it up in order to create the realism. And that's how the camera sees the realism and makes it look natural, so it doesn't look fake. So I took those same principles and created the layering technique that we now see in the industry today. And I can't be more happy than to see this, because it was so needed. And doing it all in one go was just leaving migration and blobbing. And now it's subtle and natural progressing. And people don't know that they have SMP. Like, people wouldn't know. And so I'm very excited about that. And I've included all of that in the program. I wouldn't call this a course. It's more like a program, because it's so extensive, and I cover so much and give, lots of additional information and a lot of bonuses. So there's just so much to go over. And then, of course, because you're my student, my back door is always open, and you can always DM me for any kind of additional support, so that, I can help you. And if you're with a different pigment line, I'm happy to support you, because I've used so many of them. I mean, I don't can see, but my arm is all marked up here with pigments. I've been tattooing my arm, and the ones that are all blue on my arm are all the carbon, and all the ones that are still nice and black brown on my arm are the colored pigments.
That's so funny. I've done the same thing, testing pigments. So yeah, I'm coming out with I just launched my OMG eyeliner pigments, and I'm coming out with my OMG brow pigments. And so I've tested them all on clients for the last 18 months. Lots of artists have been helping me test them, but I test them on myself too, like my leg and my own. I know exactly what you mean. Okay. So one last question, then I'll let you go. So although it's a fundamental class, so all that fundamental information, what about the PMU artist who's already doing SMP, taking a couple classes, she's doing a pretty good job, she looks at her work and she's like, yeah, I do pretty good. Still a good class for them to take. This class would still be beneficial, correct?
Oh, yeah, they're going to learn so much. You can do great work, but what happens when you get the scarring? Yeah. You don't know what to do with the scarring. What happens if you get somebody that has, a health contradiction? Right. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with, the different variations of the hairline? Some people have such a hard time with hairlines, and they do the same cookie cutter thing on every person.
Well, there's mapping, right? Just like there's mapping with brows, there's mapping with hairlines and whatnot.
But they don't understand the face shapes.
Yeah.
And so I go through all of that in this class. So even for somebody that's, intermediate, you're going to learn. You'll take a gem away from this. whether it's in, the way I show you quick techniques on how to do the hairlines or my safe setup. So many people don't learn proper setup when they're doing SMP. I go through full safe setup, so there's a lot to cover. I think there's something for everybody for sure.
Well, me and Olivia know that because we've been working with you for the last couple of months. Would you say, Olivia? Or maybe longer. So yeah, it's an excellent course. You did an excellent job, Shauna, but you do with everything you put out there. You don't do anything half-assed, and you do it, you always do it with integrity and a good moral compass. And so I'm really proud to have your course. And I think today, all of you guys listening today, if you didn't know who Shauna Magrath was, before this podcast, I'm sure, I know, just listening to this conversation, now you're interested, like, who is this girl? Because she's got so much knowledge. You tell it like it is. You're a no bullshit kind of person. You're not married to one product, one line, one this, one that. You never have been. And I always like that about you. I mean, yeah, I wish you were 100% LI, and I love you using LI, but that's not reality. Most artists, using what?
Can I tell you honestly, after 16 years in the business, LI is the only pigment line that I can honestly say has had long-term good results. The only one. So I have actually circumnavigated back to using LI again.
We're seeing a lot of that. I think I was teasing someone the other day. So you've been out there playing the field and dating and flirting and being a little promiscuous, and now you've decided I want to be monogamous, and you settled with LI, and she got a kick out of that.
And it's such a good line. And your color course, when I first started with LI, I didn't quite understand it. But then once I took that color theory class that you do, it all made sense. Yeah. And then I had the color chart, and then it was just so easy, and there's a color for every skin type. There's a color for every, color range, ethnicity. And, now you can, to have that option to be able to have something that fades naturally with time, and they come back and you're like, oh, I just have to top that up. That's great. Instead of having to go back and color correct or do removal, like a lot of the other lines that I've used, that were carbon based, and a lot of these microblading lines have all gone blue, and you're having to do removal now. That's why I do lift removal and do botched removal. It's like, you can't do botched around the eyes. So I had to do lift. Lift you can do around the eyes. You can get rid of all that blue staining. You can get rid of, the bad saturated brows. So, I mean, LI has shown itself to be tried, tested, and true in the industry. And I think that says a lot when there's all these pop-up brands, coming up every 5 minutes, and everybody's, ooh, this new great line. And ooh, I've created, something that's already existed, but I've renamed it with just another manufacturer's, label on it. And it's like, yeah, but LI is a true blooded.
Yeah. Well, I think a new line has to be out in the industry with thousands of artists all over the world using it. And it takes 5 years to know, is this a good line or not? In LI, we're celebrating 33 years this year. Yeah. And not that, and we have revamped, edited, readjusted, reformulated some of the colors to keep up with the new technologies, the new trends, and the advancements of the PMU industry. I think LI is a better line today than it ever was. And that really goes to, the people at LI that are willing to listen to the industry. When there's something you don't like about a particular color, we listen to you and we reformulate and whatnot. So yeah, I'm proud to be a part of LI. Thank you for always being honest and just being Shauna and being who you are. I appreciate it. I think you're really a person of value in this industry. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We got to wrap it up, but Shauna, you're awesome. I'm going to say goodbye to you. I'm actually going to click off. I usually stay on a little bit after and talk to you, but I got a Instagram Live I got to get to. So I'm actually going to end our podcast. And once I do, I'll let our listeners know when your course launches and give them all that information. And then I'll chit chat with you later in the day. I'll send you a little text later in the day. But Shauna Magrath, thank you so much for taking the time, all your conversation and
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of you do for our industry. Thank you for always elevating. Thank you for always being inclusive. Thank you for always being supportive. And thank you for always enriching with truth. So thank you, Teryn, for everything that you do for us as an industry all the way around.
Oh, that's awesome. You're making me blush.
Honored to be part of your team. And I look forward to the future and enriching the lives of the artists that are here and listening. And if you have any questions, I'm at Beauty Ink. I am the founder of Beauty Ink, and I'm at Beauty Ink on Instagram, and you can DM me, and I'm happy to chat with you further. So
yeah, when this launches, we'll put all that information in the comments so they can find you quite easily. All right, Shauna Magrath, you have a great rest of your day, and thank you for hanging out with us today. You got it.
Bye, honey.
You got
it.
Bye,
guys. See you on the flip side.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with us with Shauna Magrath. And I don't know her launch dates, but Olivia, do you? Do you have that information all pulled up and ready to go? We're gonna find that. I think she launches in, God, I'm so unprepared. I should have had that ready today. My apologies. I'm a terrible podcast host. But I think it's June. No, it's August. It's the end of June. July 10th. There you go. Thank you, Olivia. You saved the day. Today's Olivia's first day back after having her baby boy. So welcome back, Olivia, to the captain's chair. Yes, I missed you. I missed you.
You too.
July 10th, Shauna Magrath's SMP course will launch on the Girlz Ink Training Academy. I'm so excited about that. And we will have a free live webinar and lots of stuff in the pre-launch of that course with discounts. And we'll make sure you have all that information. We'll be doing some email blasts. You can email us at info@girlzink.com to keep up with everything. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it. And remember, stay in the pursuit of happiness. We'll see you next time.